Automobiles provided by Chevrolet, featuring the Impala Sports Sedan. Luxury and performance in a big car. Get on the move with the big one of the Chevrolet 70s, Impala. Guests of the Mike Douglas Show stay at Philadelphia's Warwick Hotel.
Nobody knows, but he's been messing up the walls all over town.
Hey, we're going to be back at it. Earl, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing real good, and I'm glad today it's going to be more lighthearted. We're going to talk about some real fun stuff today. Okay, so I just do want to remind everybody about all the information that we shared with them yesterday. And I do just want everybody to remember the apologies that were paid to Ronald Fair about the movie Cornbread Earl and Me. So what I want to do is transition from that movie, and let's talk about some stuff that really actually did happen on TV with the West Philly guys, some truthful stuff. We got some really, it's amazing. This is great. So everybody knows Fat Albert. Hey, hey, hey.
Yeah.
So
Bill Cosby, Temple University, Philadelphia.
Yeah. So let me see here, because I got something here. Okay, so I got an episode from Fat Albert. It's the 8th episode of season 2. It aired in October, I believe 73 or 72. I'll get all that information up for everybody. Don't worry about it. If folks watching are like me, I want to know. I want it all. And this is also on YouTube, so everybody can go watch this. And now, Earl, what's great is when you guys used to write on the walls, you called it signing up, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the name of the episode is Signing Off.
Signing Off.
And it's a Fat Albert episode, and it's about graffiti. And it's about someone who is doing something also with graffiti, but also doing a type of vandalism that you guys weren't doing. And this guy, Roy, was also switching around street signs, which is very dangerous. And as you know, Fat Albert always had a message. And again, as I shared with everybody, I'm born in 1970. There was not one Saturday morning that I missed Fat Albert, okay? And I didn't want to talk too much about myself, and I'm not going to do it in this episode, but people have been emailing me and asking me, can you please share some information? So just real quick, I shared some stuff about folks who are being in the project camp, all of us crazy kids on the project bus. I was born in South Flushing in a place called the Wastelands. Shout out to the Large Professor. Shout out to Royal Flush. Shout out to Neek the Exotic. Shout out to Mike Geronimo. I was actually in junior high school with Neek the Exotic. And what happened was my father was in a union, but he was unemployed in the late 70s. Times were very hard. These are the times that I remember Fat Albert the most. So even though my father was in the union and on unemployment because there was no work in the late 70s. I mean, New York City in the late 70s and actually the whole entire country, there was a recession going on.
Philadelphia was the same way.
Let me tell you, we were broker than broke. A lot of people don't know this, but back in those days, you had to actually pay a certain amount of money first to receive food stamps. In other words, in New York City, you'd have to give $20 up in order to get $100 in food stamps.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, my parents were so broke that they had to take credit cards for us to go out and eat, and that got them tangled up in debt. It was the early 80s by the time we would get out of this, my family. But what happened was my parents, I believe, they were on the list for Palmanock Houses, which is a New York City housing project, but an apartment opened up in the apartment complex right across the street first. So just real quick, when the electrical union built the low income housing for electrical apprentices,
Yeah.
there was also a plot of land donated to build Palmanock houses. And that was NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority. So the neighborhood is called Palmanock, and the neighborhood consists of just those two housing complexes.
Mhm.
And the projects are also called Palmanock houses. So those time periods that I have after school in the projects and in that summer camp, it's the
Yeah.
late 70s, man. Fat Albert was so popular. So people
Yeah.
just wanted to know a little bit about the projects I was talking with. So I literally grew up right across the street from Palmanock. I would see the projects out my back window, and there was really no difference. It was one huge apartment complex. And we're talking about like 50 apartment buildings all together. So you can imagine how many kids.
Yeah.
You can just imagine probably 25 kids coming out of each of those buildings. When we went to Jamaica High School, there was like 200 of us getting on those bus stops in our
Mhm.
neighborhood. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so enough about me. People did want to know exactly where people were asking some questions. A lot of praise, Earl, for you coming forward and finally just saying, you know what, enough is enough. And thank God that David shared some of his research with you and you found out what was going on behind the scenes. So, what we're going to do right now is just talk real quick about why are we talking about Fat Albert? Why are we talking about this episode signing off? This is awesome. So, in the newspaper article we discussed the other day on that last Zoom, it was the Philadelphia Evening Bulletin, August
Oh,
26, 1970. And you're right there mentioned
yes. Hmm.
Kilroy was here. Bobby Beck had his day. But now Cool Earl and Chewy are reigning kings of the Philadelphia Wall. So what happened is in this Fat Albert episode, I don't know if people remember Bill Cosby went to Temple, right?
Temple University. I was raised in Philadelphia. Also
Yes.
came from the projects, but initially I was born in my granddaddy's house, a natural birth baby. We transferred to Philadelphia, and about when I was about 4 years old, and I stayed there, did all my schooling in very similar projects in Philadelphia between 46 and Fairmont, 46 and Brown, and until I went in the Air Force in October of '73. So very similar backgrounds.
Okay. Earl, there's something else coming across that I hear. Is there something playing in the background?
Oh,
No. Oh, no, 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 no.
yes, that's the TV. Just a minute, 1 second.
Okay.
Hey, can you turn it on? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, babe. Can you get me something? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, sorry.
Yes, and I like that statue, Earl, on the kitchen deck there.
Oh,
So now
thank you.
we have a character who's running around and doing graffiti, and of course they're always trying to teach a lesson on the Fat Albert Show. Like I mentioned, there's always a lesson behind it. Now, the one thing with you, Earl, though, is you told me statues, churches, monuments, all that stuff was off limits.
Yes,
You guys,
in our
yes,
neighborhood.
you guys were sending a message and you wanted to write on government buildings and government affiliated things like Scepter and the trains and so forth, but you were not going to destroy statues. And I praise you for
Correct.
that.
And it was actually not only for recognition and prominence and competition between one another, but it was also to bring the city's attention to the divestment in our communities.
Yes. Yes. So Fat Albert touches on this, and this is what's just really great. So we just talked about that article. Your name's mentioned with Kilroy. So the character who's signing up on the walls in Philadelphia in this particular cartoon with the Fat Albert gang, his name is Cool Roy. They took Cool Earl and they mashed him with Kilroy was here, and we got Cool Roy. Now,
Roy.
Everybody will have seen this already when they watch this, because I'm going to put that on at the very beginning. Now, to take those two individuals, because we know how famous Kilroy was, and he was in a bunch of cartoons, from
Yes.
Popeye to Bugs Bunny.
I
Actually, the one with
myself seen him
Kilroy,
in cartoons.
yeah,
Yes.
Hair Devil Hair. The first time that we're introduced to Marvin the Martian, Bugs Bunny is on the moon, and he's walking
Okay.
around, and it says Kilroy was here on the moon rock. That's where they got the inspiration for that cartoon with you guys in the Philadelphia newspaper.
Yes.
Cold
I
Duck is
remember it
on the moon
well.
rock. Yes, and the astronaut gets there,
Kid is
and
on there. Cool Earl is on there.
yes, and he's bouncing around, and he's, oh man, these guys were here already. So that's the inspiration. That Bugs Bunny cartoon is the inspiration, I feel, for that cartoon. And a lot of people just show the cartoon, but I do deep dives on that. I got that whole article. I shared that with you. That it wasn't just a cartoon; it was a whole article also that went along with that cartoon. And we'll post that for folks. I can't remember the gentleman's name. You might remember, who drew the cartoon. We were talking about this not too long ago. I'll get it for everybody. Don't worry about it. So they take Cool Earl and they mash him up with Kilroy, and we come up with Cool Roy. I think it's the most awesome thing. I think when everybody, like I said, they'll see it before they even hear us start talking. And
I never knew anything about it. You brought it to my attention. I was surprised and very pleased. I felt honored
you
about
should.
that.
And
Uh,
again, for folks who might not know, the Fat Albert gang lived in Philadelphia.
that's right.
So it made perfect sense for them to take Cool Earl, who was the man, and put him together with Kilroy, who was a legend, and come up with that name Cool Roy. Now there's some other things I want to talk about that were very fun that happened. That cartoon, like I said, came a little later. But let's back up for a moment. We were talking about television, we were talking about movies and so forth. It
Yeah.
is so awesome to know that a week after you guys were in aerosol autographers,
Yeah.
why they do it.
Yes.
That was the
Yes.
subtitle with
Over
Sandy
again.
Padway. So at this
Mhm.
particular time, let me back up and explain to folks that at the beginning of 1971, Cool Earl, the Klepto Kid, Chewy, Cold Duck, Bobby Cool, you guys had made a mark. And you had made a mark, and you felt that it was basically your job was done, letting Philadelphia know who you guys were. And you had a meeting with SEPTA. I believe that's the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit
Transportation
Authority.
Authority, formerly PTC,
Yes.
Philadelphia Transportation, Pennsylvania Transportation Company.
Okay, so it goes from PTC, and what do you remember? You remember it being PTC when you were
Oh
young?
yeah, we were writing then. Yeah.
Okay, so when do you remember the name changing to SEPTA? Was that during your time?
Oh, it was during my time, but the latter time.
I got you. So
Yeah.
SEPTA
It's when
has
we
a
were headed
meeting.
out the door and other people were just funneling in.
Oh, sure, sure, definitely. And a lot of them,
Yeah.
Philadelphia would have an influx of writers after that, aerosol autographers, like you couldn't imagine. The same thing happened in New York in 1971 after Taki's article came out. So I just want to note right now, real quick,
Hmm.
you're the first king to be named, along with Chewy. May he rest in
Right.
peace. Your names are mentioned. The one difference with the article from the Philadelphia Evening Bulletin
Yeah.
that is different than what happened with Taki with the New York Times is that they just wrote about you. What happened in New York is they couldn't believe, who's this kid that literally bombed the whole Manhattan street grid from First Avenue to 12th Avenue, from First Street all the way up to Washington Heights. So what they did was they spent several months trying to track down Taki. So when they finally got him, it's a face-to-face interview. Now the news also came, we can't find this footage. Taki had his back to the camera, and he also had the reporter from the New York Times take his testimony. And just the same way you were crowned the king, it says it right in that article. He's the king. There was a bunch of kids out there on 183rd Street. That was between Audubon and Amsterdam up in Washington Heights. And I just want folks to know that was a rough neighborhood. There was a lot of drugs in Washington.
What year was Taki 183, right?
Yes, that article came out at July 21st, 1971. So it's about 11, it's about 10 months or so after your article, but that's why I want folks to keep in mind how this was
It's
this neck and neck thing.
Yeah,
That
it's actually 2 months after we retired in the
yes,
today's magazine. Yeah.
yes. But I mentioned the fact that they took months trying to track him down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by 1970, he was. So what Taki's important for, and he's always going to tell folks that he's not the first, but there was just a handful of guys that took it from the walls to the trains. And Taki kind of leads that charge.
Okay.
And if we look at every single train station in New York City, from testimony of these older writers, the
Yeah.
first wave is not Taki's wave at all in New York. But what happens is the guys around 69, 70, and gals like Charmin 65, they all tell me on the tiled walls, Taki must have hit 75% of every single train station in New York City and on both sides. He did not discriminate uptown from downtown, south to west.
And we shouldn't.
He was a beast.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like
it's fun because I think that you're potentially going to stand with your article next to Taki with his article, and we're going to have the first two kings from the first two cities standing side by side getting a picture this year.
and
I'm really excited.
His was July, excuse me. His was July 71. Or me and Chewy
It's
was
August.
26, 70. So it's very close. A year
Yes.
later. Yeah.
Yes. So now getting back to this time period.
Excuse me, and
Sure.
no, I did not bring in the West Philly crew, Cool Earl, Chewy, Louie, Cool Klepto Kid, Cold Duck, Bobby Cool, Bad News Jimmy. None of us brought this to New York. Okay, let's make that perfect.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bad News Jimmy.
I mean, we were there in early 70s with
Sure.
Top Cat, who became New York's Top Cat 126.
Oh, we're going to talk
Bless his
about that.
soul.
Don't give that story away right now. We're going to
Okay.
talk about that's a good one, Earl. That's a good one. Yes, Top Cat. They like to say was Cornbread's protege and brought his style. Cornbread did not
No.
write in that style. And that
No.
tea that Top Cat used, that's Titty's tea. Titty, who influenced T-Bop with the mushroom top tea.
Well, in the beginning, Top Cat did not have that tea. He had a regular elementary school
There you go.
tea.
There you go.
Large case, lowercase. He had a large case tea, just like all of us had.
And what a unique individual to be able to write in Philadelphia and New York City and to have an
Yeah.
impact in both cities. See, now, but he is Harlem's own. We do claim
Yeah,
him.
he was a nice guy.
Yes. And you did tell me is all I'm going to give him for now. And don't give up anymore, Earl. You do remember climbing up that dark staircase in his projects. That was Manhattanville Projects.
Oh yeah. Oh
on
yeah.
the west side of Manhattan, and he was literally, say, 500 feet off of that one line. And that number one line train is where it all starts in New York. And let's just stop right there because we're going to get into that on another one. That's just some information for the folks because people act like nobody knows about Top Cat 126. And the stories that are out right now are just ridiculous. And we're going to square all that away. But let's get back to that time period now.
But me, Chewy, and Cool Klepto Kid, we went to New York to visit Top Cat.
Yes, and we're going to
I'm
talk
not going to
about.
tell you how we got there.
We're going to talk about that
everything.
another time. Yeah, I'm going to cut you off right there. We're going to talk about that another time. So now, you guys have a meeting with SEPTA, which is at the it's about springtime 1971, and we'll tell them all why. So you meet with them and you ask them for jobs. Am I correct?
That's right.
And they told you no.
They told us no.
How'd you feel when you left that meeting?
Well, we felt like we're going to make them change their minds.
And how'd you do that?
By bringing a lot of work to their company and ultimately
well, first off,
a lot of employees.
Well, first,
a lot of employees get jobs.
But first, how'd you get them to change their mind? What did you do after they told you no?
By just bombing the bus barns.
Talk about that night.
We bombed the bus barns. We went in there and
night.
we just hit everything we could. And
what particular bus barn though? Tell me the way.
This was It was close to 50-ish, 50th in Baltimore, in that area.
Does
Yeah.
that barn have a particular name?
Oh, I don't know the name of the barn, but
Okay.
it didn't matter to us. They pissed us off. They didn't uh, do what we wanted them to do and what we felt like we should deserve because of the divestment again in our neighborhoods and how they're forgetting about us. And we wanted to bring it to their attention. We could make this, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And they chose the hard way. And we bombed the bus barns in the city again. And they brought us back to the table.
Mm, mm.
And we got
Now,
jobs. We got shows on what is it? Mike Douglas show, daytime talk.
we're gonna get to
And
that.
the alternative graffiti work program, murals. We got jobs out of this, painting in the projects. I guess you can say we brought them to their knees.
So let me ask you a question first, because we had trolleys in New York City, but by the 1970s, there were no longer any trolleys. So one little tidbit, when the trolleys were in Manhattan,
Yeah.
gangs would mark those trolleys in the 1920s in New York because the trolley would go up and down Manhattan and gangs wrote their names on these trolleys. That was early gang graffiti activity going on in the island of Manhattan back in
Yeah,
the
we didn't
1910s
discriminate
and
between
20s.
buses and trains and
So
trolleys. We got them all, to be
did they
honest.
store them together in the barns, the trolleys and the buses? That was
I
the
don't
question that I was
recall
going
the trolleys being in this bus barn. They didn't call it a bus barn for nothing.
to. Okay.
There's
So
no
trolleys,
trains.
uh-huh. So
Yeah,
trolleys might have been stored
somewhere
somewhere
else.
separate.
Yeah.
Got you. Do you remember ever doing a trolley storage unit?
No, I don't.
Okay. 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 So
They weren't my favorite things to tag, but we did do them.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So now you guys, you get the answer no. You go in, and I remember when you told me, you said, "Oh, it was pitch black in there. Might have been a little brisk. I might have had a light
It's
jacket on." So
very
it's
early in the morning. Very early.
springtime,
Yeah.
and you said all you heard was, psst, right? The
Yeah.
spray,
Yeah. Yeah.
the nozzle. You guys
Yeah.
were just hitting it.
We were hitting it and looking and trying to stay out of trouble and not get caught.
Sure. So obviously they realized, oh my God, look what we told these kids no, and look what happened right away. Maybe we need to reconsider. So now I'm gonna have a Zoom with Bob Rivera, and I'm gonna talk with him about this Upper Darby
Yeah.
neighborhood teacher who tried to put the program together, and hopefully we might be able to get everybody on that Zoom. But I don't
Okay.
want to get too much into that right now. But what happens is SEPTA begins to realize something needs to be done. And then all of a sudden, the Alternative Graffiti Workshop appears. And thank goodness for Cold Duck, who shared with us that pamphlet. Remember
Yeah.
that pamphlet we just got? So nobody has this pamphlet. I got it
Yeah,
now, thanks to Cold
exactly.
Duck.
In the timeline, I wrote it down. Today's magazine was May 2nd,
Yep.
71. Then
Yep.
about uh, uh, May 11th, 71, we're on the Mike Douglas show. And later in 71, I would say about June 71, we met Bob Rivera and Sandy Rubin, who created the Alternative Graffiti Workshop, which led to a lot of the murals and jobs and
Right. And now
opportunities.
what's interesting is that at first SEPTA told you no, but on the inside cover of that pamphlet, they must have changed their mind because they're listed as a sponsor. SEPTA. So they changed their mind. And once again,
It
we
had
have
to have been after the no. The no
sure,
turned
definitely.
into yes.
Definitely. So I believe Turtle. Do you remember Turtle?
Yeah, I remember seeing that name.
So Turtle was involved with that pamphlet. I believe Cold Duck might have been involved. Cold Duck was doing a lot of artwork. Titty
Yes, it
was
was.
doing a lot of artwork. And so basically, now the Graffiti Alternatives Workshop comes down. Scepter is one of the sponsors. There's definitely other sponsors. And at some point now, you have adults in your life. And as you just mentioned this
Yeah.
timeline, you
Yeah.
start going and doing different interviews. So you do the Sandy Padwe, which was a big photo shoot. You guys are on the
Today's
front cover.
magazine. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
And it's very important to mention that Today magazine was inside an insert inside the Philadelphia Inquirer's Sunday edition. Am I correct about that?
Correct. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay. Yes, the New York Times has something similar to that. So here you are on the cover of that, Inside magazine. That's awesome. And this is what's great now. So right as soon as these things start rolling, May 2nd, May 11th, now all of a sudden, you're on the Michael Douglas show with no one else but the Godfather of
That's right.
soul.
In the West Philly crew.
James Brown. No, Mr. Dynamite.
Yes, James Brown. We've seen him on South Street before.
It's star time, baby.
Yeah.
Star time, baby. So now, and this is a great story. Chewy is a very funny character. Rest in peace to Chewy, man. No. I really wish that I could have met him, because some of the funniest stories are he's wrapped up in them. So you guys are on the elevator. You're waiting to go up to the floor where the Michael Douglas show is being filmed, and you're in the elevator with James Brown.
Yeah.
And Chewy whispers something to James Brown, and you and the kid don't know what it is.
Classic Chewy.
And when you get off, the kid goes, "Hey, what'd you say to James Brown?" I asked him if he had a quarter.
What can I say?
And what did he say? No. So I think it would have only been Chewy.
I would have been embarrassed to do that, but hey,
not Chewy.
We're all individuals,
Not Chewy. God bless Chewy. God bless Chewy, man. Rest in peace. Yes, because Chewy pioneered that fat cap in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, from the
pioneered that fat cap.
Largo starch can. He exchanged the Largo starch can spray cap with the spray paint cap, and made it more or less a thick lettering.
And you
almost
see it
like it was a semi bubble.
You see it. Writing. You see it. It's his tags are 3 times thicker than everybody else's. That's unique. Titty was unique because he took a lot of space up. He was very tall with his Titty.
Yes.
So these are where some of the unique characteristics begin to show and surface, which will affect the writers that come after you guys.
Early style. Yes.
And Titty, okay, T-Bot was inspired by Titty. I just want to say this real quick. So we know that we hear Cornbread always say there was no one from 1967 and 1969 writing. But before Titty even started with his mushroom top tee, okay, we got a Titty peace sign. There's a Titty peace sign right in Wall Riders. It's a plain tee, and it wraps around with the Y, and it says 68. So we already know Titty was writing. Okay, we already know that because he put a date on it. So once again, totally discredits everything that Cornbread
he's one of the first people I've seen besides ourselves, Dr. Cool, Dr. Hank, Titty.
Before Cornbread, you mean?
Oh, before Cornbread, yeah.
Right.
I didn't know Titty was until Louis brought him his that he met him, and then we invited him in our neighborhood.
So
now it's like 1969.
Yes, it could have even been 70. When I talked to the kid, he thinks about Shanahan's.
Or so,
might have been 1970. Shanahan's. That's where they finally. Do you remember that club, Shanahan's?
Oh yeah, I remember. It was a very dangerous place.
Sometimes. Yes, Ed has a distinct memory, and his memory puts it at 1970.
Okay.
So now, you guys are on the Michael Douglas show. Now, you don't sit down with Michael Douglas, but they do have you come out, and there's a canvas there.
Right.
And they want you to show everybody what it is that you guys are doing. And this all is what a time period for you guys. And it's you guys. Once again, it's you guys.
It was unreal.
It's you. It's you on Fat Albert. It's you on the Michael Douglas show. It's nothing to do with this other character. Okay. So now, do you remember what was it? They handed you a magic marker. Walk us through that. What do you remember? So you get out of the elevator. James Brown didn't have a quarter for Chewy.
We were more or less the ending of the show. We all walked out there, and there was like this paper, huge paper that you would roll up fish with or something or other, or wrap up a
Okay.
book with. It was
Okay.
huge, the size of a big wall. And Michael Douglas asked us to do our things and just to put some writing on the wall, some sort of drawings on the wall. And it was a short thing, but we did our thing, and they showed it on TV, and the program went off. And he recognized who we were, though,
Yes.
And I really appreciate that.
Yes.
We all did.
Yes.
Because that's what we're looking for,
Eddie
some sort
mentions
of
that also.
recognition and opportunity.
Yes, Eddie mentions that also. He remembers the canvas. He remembers that you guys did not sit down with Michael. It was a segment where you guys
Right.
went right out to the canvas. So, I forgot what I was going to say, and it was important. Oh boy, what was I going to just ask you? So, anyway, I do want to say, oh, that's right. So, we were sad the other day. A lot had just happened. We had got news about Sank. It was right. You look in better spirits today, Earl.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel in better spirits. It
yeah. He
was
was my
not a
friend.
it was not a fun week.
He was
A
my
lot of
contact. He was my contact. I'm in Georgia currently, and he was my contact in Philadelphia with all my other brothers, Wall Writing brothers.
sure.
Lewis. Is another one.
And a
Right.
very respectful brother Sank was.
Yes. So is Lewis. All of them were
Oh yes,
respectful. And
I had a
when I went there in 2018 for the documentary, they were so respectful and they actually lined up to get my autograph, and I was like
right,
overwhelmed with
right.
like appreciation. All the recognition. It was nothing about gang banging, and because it was just about the culture, and it was beautiful. I'll never
Yes.
forget it.
Yes. So let me say this. I did
We had
have
a
a conversation.
barbecue at Lewis' home. He
Uh-huh.
was
Uh-huh.
generous and he opened his home to us. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I really appreciate that, Lewis.
I had a conversation with Lewis just yesterday, great conversation. And I told him a little bit about that Bobby Beck research that had to do with the Teamsters and Johnny Torpedo
Mhm.
trying to erase the voice graffiti that was spread all over Philadelphia. That's for another episode. I'm not going to give that one away. Remember voice? VOICE. You remembered it and you were like, wow, I can't believe you brought that name up.
I
That
that's old. Yeah,
early on.
yeah.
So that happened in 62 and 63. You were very young.
Okay.
But you remembered
No
it.
wonder I'm looking like this. Okay.
Yes, you remembered it. A lot of people remembered it.
Yeah.
Sketch remembered
Yeah.
it. Cold Duck remembered it. Cold Duck remembered a dentist office where his mother used to take him that had the whole wall drawn with a Kilroy leaning over, and he definitely remembered the voice. When I gave
Wow.
this information to Lewis about the voice being attached to Bobby Beck, and I don't want to give too much of that away,
Ah.
Lewis said, "Oh man, you're killing it."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, "You're killing it. You're bringing out this history that no
That's
one is
where. Mhm.
right."
Mhm.
Remember, it was
Okay.
wrapped up with Jimmy Hoffa and the
Yeah.
Truckers. So
And,
we're
and,
gonna leave that for. We're gonna
and
leave
it
that.
was wrapped up with Bobby Beck, like you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it appears that we're digging up stuff that has never ever been put together. It's this Philadelphia Wall Riders project. We're doing this the right way, and I'm very very pleased. So you guys are on the Michael Douglas show. You say, do you remember the crowd's reaction? Do you remember cheers? Do you
Oh, they
remember?
were cheering. Yes.
There you go.
I felt overwhelmed,
Do
as a 16-year-old, I'm overwhelmed.
on the Michael Douglas show with the Godfather of Soul. Do you remember seeing James perform?
Of course.
Oh man.
Of course. I mean,
Right.
I went to his concerts as well. I mean, I enjoyed James Brown.
Right. So
He,
James Brown
he was one of the
performs.
men.
So James Brown performs, and then you guys go and tag on this canvas.
Yeah.
All on the same. So do you remember? Was he kneel down? Did they take the cape off of him? Did he put the whole thing on, man?
I don't recall the cape and all of that, but
Okay.
he put on a good show every
Like
time I've seen him.
like always. Like
But at the
always.
Spectrum, yeah, he had the cape, kneeling down
Right.
and everything, And
71,
that was in
70.
Gee, that was
Uh-huh.
maybe the time that he came on the show. He came to Philadelphia to do that show at the Spectrum, I believe.
Okay, I wouldn't doubt he's in
Yeah,
town, right?
yeah,
Might as well do the
yeah.
Michael Douglas show. And
Because
by
we
the
all
way,
went to it. All the boys went to it. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great memory. So let me just clear up the Michael Douglas show for folks real quick. Michael Douglas show was a daytime talk
Talk
show.
show.
So it was
Oh,
not an evening program. It was located in studios in Philadelphia, downtown, correct?
correct.
Do you remember where the studio was?
It was in a hotel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was inside a hotel, somewhere along 16th and between Market and Chestnut
Gotcha.
in that
Gotcha.
area, or Market and Walnut, because there's Market and then there's Chestnut, then Walnut, Spruce, etc. You know.
So you guys were just that was a week, boy. You guys were just that's a bit, well, a little bit over a week, but and actually it's about that whole 6 month period really was like from the beginning of 1971. That's it. You guys had already
That was
made
our
that
year.
mark. Yeah, you guys had
Yeah.
already made your mark. You were in the paper for the first times, the first writers ever who were teenagers, and you're compared with Bobby Beck and Kilroy, and that's in 1970. By the time 71 rolls around, you guys are on the top of the pile. West
Yeah.
Philly is killing it.
Mhm.
You guys are up more than anybody, by the way. And I want to make that clear that nobody came close to you guys when it came to having your name up around that city.
Well,
That's what I was heard.
we weren't afraid to go anywhere. That's the thing
That's what I
about it.
heard.
And like I said, we didn't ask for permission, not getting arrogant or anything, but we weren't playing stupid. We didn't have a death wish, and we did what we had to do,
You know, Earl,
and we got out of there. And when that article came out in August 26,
1970,
1970, we had already put in
three and a half
three
years.
years, and yeah, 3.5 years. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and then it paid off, and
yeah.
your cry to the city, what was answered to a certain degree. Would you say that?
Yes, yes, I say so because also not only well, I'll speak for myself, but I was offered a scholarship, and you wouldn't believe this, at an all-girl college in Center City. And I turned it down to go to what I was thinking was Vietnam in the Air Force.
Earl, that's like a movie. You in the old girls school, cool Earl. In the old girls school. That's funny. You did tell me about that.
Yeah,
So,
and the same thing was offered to Duck. Cole Duck had a scholarship offered for him as well.
and you know what? I speak with Cold Duck.
Yeah,
I'm probably
yeah.
the only researcher who's spoken with Cold Duck. I don't know anybody else that's ever spoken with Cold Duck, and we get along. You know, he sent
Mhm.
me a text after he saw the first Zoom, and he said simply, David, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Because this is the stuff that's buried, you know? So
Yeah.
now Cold Duck is also an extremely intelligent individual.
Yes, he is.
So let me just see, is there anything else that you want to say about the Michael Douglas show? Because we're going to wrap this one down. Is there anything else you can think about that you'd like to say about that experience on the Michael Douglas show, which is tremendous? To be there with the Godfather, all of that, what a memory.
Except that it was just exciting, exhilarating. It's like didn't know what to do with ourselves, you know,
I can
type of thing,
imagine.
you know.
I'm gonna say
Can you
something.
believe this? I mean, yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
I met Tina Turner. I met James Brown.
Mhm.
One that really touched me was in 1994. Me and my friend used to go to the Grammys in Radio City Music Hall. And when the intermission would come, we would walk in backwards. The crowd would come out and we would walk in backwards. No lie. So we would end up in Radio City
That's
Music
original.
Hall. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we're in Radio City Music Hall now. We're in the lobby. And here comes a wheelchair. And in 1994, Bruce Springsteen honored Curtis Mayfield. And at that point, Curtis was in the wheelchair. That was what I saw him, me and one other gentleman. We saw him, and I went and I dropped on my knee and I grabbed his hand and I said, Mr. Mayfield, your music told the story of some of the most turbulent times in our country. And I don't want you to think for one moment that it fell on empty ears.
Yeah.
Excuse me, deaf ears.
Automobiles provided by Chevrolet, featuring the Impala Sports Sedan, luxury and performance in a big car. Get on the move with the big one of the Chevrolet 70s, Impala. Guests of the Mike Douglas Show stay at Philadelphia's Warwick Hotel.